May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your eyes, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Good morning. We have quite an interesting reading from Luke this morning. But just prior to it, Jesus and the disciples had made the trip from Galilee across the sea. During that trip, while Jesus was sleeping, the boat was caught in a terrific storm. The disciples, fearing for their lives, woke Jesus, begging him to save them. And he calmed the waters and the wind, saving all those on board, and said to them, "Where is your faith?" The disciples were afraid and amazed and did not respond to Jesus' question, but remarked to themselves, "Who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him?" They were still not sure of who Jesus was, of his identity. That is what occurred just prior to this morning's reading, with their arrival at the Gentile country of the Gerasenes. Here, Jesus gets out of the boat, and apparently the disciples stay behind, as they are not mentioned at all in the rest of the reading. Jesus is met by one man, possessed by demons, and those demons clearly knew the identity of Jesus. The man had been cast out of his community because of those demons and because of the fear of them. And we do not know how long he had been living in those tombs, but we can assume it was for many years, long enough so that when he was asked his name, the response was Legion, referring to the number of demons that possessed him. He did not answer with his own name, possessed for so long that he had lost his own identity, separated from his community and even himself. But by the end of the reading, he had an identity. Jesus sent him forth as his first missionary or disciple to the Gentiles. And what about those demons who did know the identity of Jesus? Apparently knowing that they were to be exorcised, they asked him not to send him into the nearby water, but to send them into the herd of swine so they can continue their lives, so to speak. They knew that water would be the end of them. So Jesus allowed them to enter the swine. But lo and behold, the swine take off into the lake and were drowned along with the demons. The pig herders were in shock by what they saw. For one thing, there went their livelihood, but also because they witnessed the healing of the man who had been possessed for so long. Filled with fear, they asked Jesus to leave, not knowing the identity of this man who had just done these things. Now, we are accustomed to Jesus asking people to come and follow me, but not in this case. Jesus, instead of accepting our main character's request to go with Jesus, sends him forth with his restored identity to spread Jesus' message to the Gentiles, making him the first disciple of this ministry. Identity is an important aspect of our personalities, lives, and connections to the communities of which we are a part. Others may perceive our identity differently than we do, based on the experiences and beliefs. In some cases, others, in how they characterize us, may not see our identity at all, or they have a perverted image of our identity. This past week and month, we have had occasion to witness the non-accepting or recognizing of our other people's identity and how that has impacted the lives of those people. And in some cases, we celebrate with them the overcoming of perverted images of their identity. We have been celebrating throughout the month LGBTQ+ Pride. How much courage it has taken on the part of those in this community and their allies to get to where we are today in the acceptance and growing understanding of their identities, of how they see themselves. But there are still many who want to take away the rights and acceptance of LGBTQ plus individuals in our communities and in our government. The fight and support continues. And today is World Refugee Sunday. There are some 123 million individuals across the world who have been forcibly displaced. I don't know what it feels like to be a refugee, but I imagine it is having a loss of identity, a loss of home and heritage, of not knowing how you'll survive the persecution by others because of how they perceive who you are, of having an identity placed on you by others. With the turmoil in the world today, the number of refugees is sure to grow, and the safe places for them to escape are decreasing. And that is why we need to continue to support organizations like HISPA and the Episcopal Migration Ministries. This past Thursday, we celebrated Juneteenth, at the moment still a national holiday. It is known to some as the African American community's July 4th, a people whose identities were stripped from them when they were brought to our country as slaves, and who some still only see as a distorted version of who they really are, with no respect for their actual identity, only that they are second-class or lower individuals. Here too, the fight for equality and respect continues. And on Saturday, June 14th, there were no King's rallies across the country, with one major issue being immigration deportation. What we are seeing done on the streets of our country by government-supported gangsters shows no effort to see the identities of those they capture, only that the individual will help them meet their quota. We need to keep on demonstrating and recall the rallying cry we used in the 60s. The whole world is watching. Among my friends is a highly educated immigrant from India who is a US citizen and has lived here since 1977. Another is an African American couple who have been citizens since their birth. They have all found it necessary to lay low, to always have a copy of their birth certificate or citizenship papers with them for fear of being stopped or accosted by government agents. We see reports on the news all the time now, but when you personally know someone who is living in fear for no legal reason, it makes it more real than you want it to be. And this past Friday, we recognized the longest day, a recognition and support of those living with Alzheimer's and other dementias. Years ago, individuals suffering from these diseases were fully misunderstood, and like our main character in their reading, were isolated from the larger community, denied an identity other than the misunderstood characterizations society placed on them. Here, the fight for a cure and making treatment available for all is imperative. Even though they may not think, act, or remember like they used to, they have an identity as a member of our community. Please consider supporting the Alzheimer's Association or the Dementia Society of America. And this past Friday, we also celebrated the life of Barclay Fleming here at St. Mary's. I really did not know Barclay that well, mostly as the guy who always rang the bell and was a great asset in keeping the service going on Sundays. That was his identity for me. But on Friday, I learned much more about who he was and how he is being remembered. Identity. It is important to each of us individually as we grow in our understanding of ourselves. It is important in how others perceive us and how they come to know who we are. It is important to remember to recognize others as human beings, whatever struggles they are facing, and to be there for them, not to turn away because they may be in some way different than us. It is explicit in our baptismal covenant. It is explicit in the teachings of Christ and the prophets. It is implicit in our communion participation, in which we are saying yes to God's call. It is explicit in the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself, allowing others to live their identities, accepting and loving them for who they are, and to show forth in our lives what we profess in our faith. Amen.